Then the argument further goes. There is therefore nothing very extravagant in the suggestion that this passage is a later interpolation by Bhikkhus. In the first place, the Sutta Pitaka was not reduced to writing till 400 years had passed after the death of Buddha. Secondly, the editors who compiled and edited them were monks, and the monks' editors compiled and wrote for a monk. The statement attributed to the Buddha is valuable for a monk to preserve his rule of celibacy, and it is not unlikely for the monk editor to interpolate such a rule. So, what the argument we are trying to understand here is that the text the dialogue which we get into Sutta Pitaka chapter 5 is a later interpolation by Buddhist monks, and why they have given the name or the reference of Buddha, because it was more significant for this monks to direct in a proper way and make it sure that this is what Buddha's teachings are there. Because if they put their own name, then maybe their followers would not follow them, they would not take them serious. So that is why the dialogue is written in the name of Buddha and in the discussion form of with Ananda. And there are two other considerations which go to support the suggestion that this passage is a later interpolation. Firstly, from the table given in the introduction to this sutta, to be found on page 72 of Digha Nikaya part 2 in SBB series by Davids, it will be noticed that a great many of the passages which occur in this sutta also occur in other suttas. It is important to note that this passage does not occur in any other sutta, notwithstanding the fact that they contain so many passages from this sutta. So this text, this paragraph which we are talking about, the dialogue between Buddha and Ananda, and where Buddha is denying the interaction with women, is we don't find this interaction or this dialogue anywhere else. Because secondly, the argument is being given that secondly from the pages 38 of the introduction of the sutta, published volume 11 of the SBE by Davids, it appeared that there exists a Chinese version of this sutta, but this Chinese text also does not contain this particular passage. So this particular passage which we find in Sutta Pitaka, Mahaparinirvana Sutta, chapter 5, we don't find the same text here in Chinese version where this text is there, and in other sutta which is also published by SBB series by Davids, part 2. Let us go further and apply the test of probability. Was there any reason why Ananda should have asked such a question? Was it keeping with the known relations of Buddha with women? There is evidence to show that such a question could not have been asked by Ananda, and that if such a question had been asked, the Buddha could not have given such a reply. The conduct of Ananda and of the Buddha towards women, as reported in the Pitakas, is so contrary to the possibility of such question being raised and as such an answer being given. So when we read Pitakas, which is during Buddha and Ananda's period, we never find that Mahatma Buddha is actually talking any such kind of interaction where he is denying to talk to women and to keep women in a subordinate position. So we don't find here. So this is clear that this reference which is being given in Mahaparinirvana Sutta chapter 5, a dialogue between Ananda and Buddha, is later interpolation by monks to maintain the discipline and celibacy in the monkhood. Then on the point as to whether there was any necessity of Ananda to ask such a question, it is relevant to note that in the same chapter of Mahaparinirvana Sutta, only a few gathas are removed from those quoted above. The Buddha described how sweet was Ananda and how he was loved by all. Out of them, I quote below the two following gathas. So there are a number of gathas associated with Ananda, and through these two examples, we could come to know that how Ananda was loved by even women monks and his men brethren also. Brethren, there are these four wonderful and marvelous qualities in Ananda. So these are the qualities we are going to know about Ananda. If brethren, a number of the brethren of the older should come to visit Ananda, they are filled with joy on beholding him. And if Ananda should then preach the truth to them, they are filled with joy at the discourse. While the company of brethren is ill at ease, brethren where Ananda is silent. So if when Ananda is meeting to the elderly monks and they feel so happy, and when they are discussing, interacting with Ananda, they feel so high spirited. But if Ananda keeps silent, then they feel the brethren is ill at ease, brethren when Ananda is silent. If brethren, a number of sisters of the order, or the devotee man, or of the devotee woman should behold him, and if Ananda should then preach the truth to behold them, they are filled with joy and at the discourse, while the company of sister is ill at ease, brethren when Ananda is silent. So when Ananda is interacting with women, they are filled with joy and they listen the discourse so happily, and they are very eager to know the truth from Ananda. But if Ananda doesn't speak and he is silent, then sisters feel ill and at unease. So this is how the loving relationship between Ananda and his brethren monks and sister monks are there. From this it is clear that it was usual for Ananda to meet women, not only sister but devoted women who were not members of the order. He used to see them, meet them and talk to them. Why then should Ananda have asked such a question? The Buddha knew that the woman used to meet Ananda. He raised no objection before. Why should he have a thought of interdicting the forbidding all contact with women? The whole passage is so unnatural that it must be regarded as a later monastic interpolation. So the fact is clear before you. There is another instance in the life of Ananda, and we all know that during Buddha included women in ascetic life. Buddha gave a woman even opportunity to attain moksha, and Buddha was so equal that he never discriminated men to women. So that's through his writings, through his dialogues, through his evidence, and even the literature which is available in different countries. For example, Chinese literature, the same interpretations we are able to read and find there. There is another instance in the life of Ananda which stand in stark contrast with the passage in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta. As is well known, in the first Sangiti council, 5 complaints were made against Ananda. They are, so when the first Sangiti happened, then during that there are some issues came, and some of them were against Ananda. So what are the issues which came against Ananda? The first issue, let me read out. It is actually an issue at the number 3, but let me read out first. That he caused the body of the departed soul Lord to be saluted first by women, so that it was soiled by their tears. When Buddha got parinirvana, then Ananda allowed his women folk, his sisters and his women monks to see Buddha's body first. And this is the complaint which has come in the first council, that why did he allow women to see Mahatma Buddha's parinirvana body see first. The first complaint is that he failed to ask which part of the Vinaya were in the opinion of the Buddha, the lesser part of the which he gave authority to Sangha to alter the amends. That second is that he stepped on the robe of Lord during retreat when sewing it. Third, I have already read that, I repeat again, that he caused the body of the departed Lord to be saluted first by women, so that it was soiled by their tears. The fourth complaint was that he did not ask the Lord to live for a cycle. And fifth is that he was principally instrumental in getting women admitting to the Sangha. So these complaint number 3 and complaint number 5, where he instrumentally in getting women admitting in Sangha, Ananda did this, and Ananda allowed women to see Lord Buddha's parinirvana body. So these are the complaints which has come in the first council, and these are evidentical that he was never against women. He always respected and gave dignity to women. To all these charges Ananda pleaded guilty. Whether he should have pleaded guilty or not is another matter. What is of interest is the third charge, for it has great relevance to the issue in the question. Why did Ananda allow women to touch the body of Master if the advice given by him, as mentioned in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta, is true as fact? Would he so flagrantly and knowingly disobeyed the advice given by Buddha a few minutes before? The answer must be in the negative. What follows from this negative answer? What follows is that the Buddha had not given such an advice as is alleged against him. For if he had given such an advice, Ananda could not have acted contrary to it. If it therefore stand to reason that no such advice had been given by Buddha. So we have come to know the fact that in the Parinirvana Sutta, chapter 5, what is being dialogue is being mentioned in Eve's weekly article, Our New Republic, published in January 21, 1950, is wrong. Let us now consider the question from the side of the Buddha. Would it have been natural for Buddha to give such a reply? The answer to this question must depend upon Buddha's course of conduct towards women. Did the Buddha avoid meeting women as to suggested by the advice he is reported to have given to Ananda? Where are these facts? Two examples at one come to mind. One is that of the Vishakha. She was one of the 80 chief disciples of the Buddha. Now please note this fact carefully, very seriously. She was Vishakha. She was one of the 80 chief disciples of the Buddha with the title of Chief of Alms Givers. Did not Vishakha at one time go to hear Buddha preach? Did she not enter his monastery? Did the Buddha act towards Vishakha in the manner he directed Ananda to act towards women? Did the Buddha bhikkhu, what did the bhikkhu present at the meeting do? Did they leave the meeting? So another example is Vishakha was one of the 80 chief disciple of Buddha, and it is clear that she was given the title even Chief of Alms Givers. So it shows that Buddha is interacting with Vishakha and she is being given honor. She is being honored. So it is very evidentical that Mahatma Buddha is interacting with women monk and women preachers comfortably. The second instance that comes to one's mind is that of the Amrapali of Vaishali. We all know the story of Amrapali of Vaishali. She was known as Nagarvadhu or a courtesan. She went to see Buddha and gave him and his monks an invitation for meal at her house. She was courtesan. She was the most beautiful woman in Vaishali. वो वैशाली की बहुत खूबसूरत महिला थी. Did the Buddha and bhikkhus avoid her? On the other hand, they accepted the invitation, rejecting the invitation of Lichavis, who felt quite insulted on that account and went to her home and partook of her food. So वैशाली ने जब उन्हें, आम्रपाली ने जब उन्हें बुलाया, वैशाली की जो सबसे खूबसूरत महिला थी जो कि नगर वधू थी, और नगर वधू का दर्जा समाज में इतना अच्छा नहीं होता है, और उसी वक्त महात्मा बुद्ध के पास लिच्छवी जो कि वहाँ के राजा थे उनका भी इनविटेशन था, लेकिन महात्मा बुद्ध लिच्छवी के इनविटेशन को मना करके आम्रपाली के यहाँ गए and he took his disciples there. So this statement is so significant. I read it again. The second instance that come to one's mind is that of Amrapali of Vaishali. She went to see Buddha and gave him and his monks an invitation for a meal at her house. She was courtesan. She was the most beautiful woman in Vaishali. Did the Buddha and the bhikkhus avoid her? On the other hand, they accepted the invitation, rejecting the invitation of the Lichavis, who felt quite insulted on that account and went to her home and partook of her food. So Buddha went there and he took food there in the house of Vaishali. There are another example Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is giving in support of Mahatma Buddha, that how he was respectful and dignified for the woman. On other example are not wanting. The Nanda Kovada Sutta tells of Mahaprajapati Gautami having brought 500 alms women with her to Buddha when he was staying at Shravasti with the request that he should instruct them in the doctrine and discipline. Did the Buddha run away from them? Or that this evidence is so amazing Mahaprajapati Gautami brought 500 women for to getting the doctrine and disciple of Buddha, and they were all women. And Mahatma Buddha actually gave them learning and inducted in his religious fold. The Samyukta Nikaya reported that Kokanada, the daughter of Pujana, Pajuna, when the night was for spent shedding radiant with her effluent beauty over the whole Mahavana, came into the presence of Buddha when he was staying at Vaishali. So, some Samyukta Nikaya report that Kokanada, a daughter of Pajuna, when the night was far spent shedding radiant with her effluent beauty over the whole Mahavana, came into the presence of Buddha when he was staying in Vaishali. The report of frequent visit of Queen Malika, wife of King Prasenajit, to the Buddha for religious instructions are scattered in the Pitakas. So, the introduction we come to know is Mahaprajapati Gautami bringing 500 women for the learning and teaching to Buddha, all his women, her women folk. Then this Kokanada, who also came in the learning fold of Mahatma Buddha, and Queen Malika, who was the wife of King Prasenajit, she most of the time interacted Mahatma Buddha. From these instances, it is clear that the Buddha did not shun women, and women were not afraid of going to Buddha. It is true that Buddha did advise the bhikkhu not to make it a habit to visit families of lay disciple for fear of human weakness yielding to frequent contact with women, but did not forbid such visits, nor did he express any disdain women as such. So, okay, so these are the instances we are counting. It is also true that Buddha was dreadfully keen in maintaining celibacy. He was painfully aware of the fact that, to use his own words, women don't stay in life of celibacy. But what did he advise? Did he advise bhikkhus to shun all contact with women? Not at all. He never put any such interdict. Far from doing any such thing, what he did was to tell the bhikkhus that whenever they met any woman, do ye call mother mine. So, mother mine, sister mine, and daughter mine. And this is what teachings he gave, that no need to keep women away. But when you are meeting any woman, there are three kinds of mind you have to keep. When you see a woman, you see whether she is a mother mind. I mean, keep in your mind that she is a mother, and if she is a sister, and she is a daughter. So whenever bhikkhus are interacting with women, they have to keep women in three category of their mind: mother mind, sister mind, daughter mind. If a woman is elderly, call her mother. If she is of equal of your age, call her sister. If she is younger, then call her sister. तो औरत को आप तीन तरह से देख सकते हैं, एक माँ के रूप में, एक बहन के रूप में, और एक बेटी के रूप में. तो उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. और आपको जिस तरह मनु ने कहा है, औरतों से भागना चाहिए, औरतों का तिर्या चरित्र होता है, ऐसा बुद्ध ने कभी नहीं कहा. The second possible ground which an opponent of the Buddha can reply upon in support of the accusation is that opposition of the Buddha to women joining Sangha, and in making the Bhikkhuni Sangha when he ultimately allowed it subordinate to Bhikkhu Sangha. Here again the further analysis of the situation is necessary. Why did the Buddha oppose the demand of Mahaprajapati to take Parivrajya ordinance? Did he oppose it because he was of the opinion that women were low class whose admission would lower the status of Sangha in public esteem? Or did he oppose it because he was of the opinion that women intellectually and morally were incapable of realizing the ideal of his doctrine and his discipline? The second of these two questions was definitely put to Buddha by Ananda in the course of the argument when he found the Buddha somewhat adamant. The Buddha gave an unequivocal answer, leaving no room for doubt or dispute. He said that Women were fully capable of realizing his doctrine and his discipline, and that was not the reason why he refused their demand of taking parivraja. It is clear that the Buddha did not regard women as inferior to men, either in point of intellect or character. That he opposed to the admission of women because he held them in low esteem and feared that they might lower the prestige of the Sangha, as an argument which is hardly worth mentioning. For if that was his feeling, he would have never admitted them all. So, a Buddha, he never said that women are intellectually and in their learnings they are lower than men, and that is why he gave women to get a chance to achieve moksha, to understand his learnings and his discipline and his doctrine, and that's how he gave equal opportunity to a woman. To the argument that he made the Bhikkhuni Sangha subordinate to Bhikkhu Sangha, the answer is question beyond this arrangement that there was no consideration as to superiority or inferiority. What lay behind this argument were consideration of purely practical character in admitting women to the Parivrajika. Parivrajika is called as nuns. The Buddha had to face two questions. Should there be only one Sangha or for men and women? He decided to have two separate Sanghas. He was afraid that in confraternity of men and women, Parivrajikas, the rule of celibacy would be completely lost. While therefore admitting women, he thought it was necessary to use his own words and dive between them, creating two separate organizations. Having decided to create two separate organizations, he was faced with another question. If there are to be two separate sanghas, one of men and one for women, where they be quite dependent and separate organizations, or was there to be some sort of interrelation between the two? So, to maintain the characteristics and celibacy, because it is a human flaw, it is a human nature that human commit mistakes. So to understanding by this nature of human, which is associated with anyone, whether you are a ascetic or a monk or an ordinary human being. Keeping this human nature in mind, Buddha decided to keep two separate sanghas, one for women, one for men, and there is no question that any one of them were either subordinate to the other. This question was not there. On the first issue, no other decision was possible except that the women's sangha should be separated from the men's sangha. This was an inevitable consequences which followed from the rule of celibacy, which was binding on both. The Buddha knew what a great force of sex instinct is with the life of both men as well as women. To use the Buddha's own words, it is this instinct which drives a man in woman's bondage and woman in a man's bondage. This force, if given an opportunity to have its full force, the rule of celibacy could not last for a minute. To save the rule of celibacy, he has to organize separate sangha. So this is how the beautiful explanation is being given, because Buddha, who was the expertise of human nature, he knew what human nature could commit mistakes. So and this is from both the sides. So if the men and women are being kept together, there are very many chances that the rule of celibacy would not be followed, and that's how he decided to keep separate sanghas. To take up the second issue, was any decision possible other than the one of Buddha's look? The women who joined his faith were raw women. They had to be instructed on his doctrine, and they had to be trained in his rule of discipline. Who could undertake this task? To whom else could he have entrusted this work? To none except then male bhikkhus of his order, for they were already instructed in his doctrine and trained in his discipline. And this is what he did. Now, what was the relationship that was forged between the bhikkhus and bhikkhunis by entrusting the work of instructions of the later to former? This is necessary question to raise. Without the explanation of the insubordination of the bhikkhunis, sangha or bhikkhu sangha does not become quite clear. The obvious answer to this question is that entrusting the work of training a bhikkhunis to bhikkhus, the relationship become one of teacher and pupil. Now does not the relationship of teacher and pupil involve some authority for the teacher over the pupil, and some submission and subordination to the part of the pupil? What more did Buddha do? So then he says that when he decided to keep separate sanghas, bhikkhunis and bhikkhus, then he made it clear, because women were inducted later in his sangha, and they were raw women. They didn't know much about the doctrine and learning and discipline. So it was necessary for him to instruct some male to uh, to train these women. And the relationship, what could be the relationship between bhikkhunis and bhikkhus? So bhikkhunis and bhikkhus, the relationship will be teacher and taught, teacher and pupil, guru and shishya. And there is always a mild authority. A guru is always having milder authority to the shishya or student. So that is why it is how the experienced are instructing the lesser experience. There is no question of subordination, and that is why the purest form of relationship he established between bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, teacher and taught, guru and shishya. And this is what this pupil and teacher and pupil. In this question, it is useful to compare the relationship between monasteries and nunneries in the Christian church. Are not the nunneries subordinate to the monasteries? Of course they are. Can anybody therefore say that Christianity treats women as inferior to men? Why then should a different interpretation to be put upon the arrangement made by the Buddha for regulating the relation between bhikkhunis and bhikkhus? So the example is giving that in the Christianity also, sisters are there, nuns are there, and men, monks are there, and there is always a relationship between the teacher and taught. So it doesn't mean that anybody is subordinate to other. So far as the Sutta Pitaka is concerned, there is absolutely no ground for the charge that Buddha had a prejudice against women and was forever exhorting men to beware of them. Let us pass the particular instance to the general attitude of Buddha towards women in general. Did the Buddha hold women in lower esteem? I am sure that whoever read a reference to women by the Buddha, which occur in the sacred literature of the Buddhist, will be convinced that far from doing anything which would have the effect of degrading the woman, the Buddha all alone tried to enable woman and to elevate her. Let me give a few illustrations in support of this. So how Buddha actually illustrated and enlightened women in their status and their birth order. The birth of the daughter has been for ancient past regarded as a calamity by the people of India generally. Did the Buddha share this sentiment? His attitude towards this question was quite contrary to the traditional view, as it illustrated by the advice of King Prasenajit. Once King Prasenajit was visiting Buddha at Shravasti in Jeta garden. A messenger from a royal palace came and informed him that his wife Queen Malika had given birth to daughter. On hearing this news, the king went off his color and looked sad and dejected. The Buddha noticed this change on his face and asked him for the cause of it. On being informed of it, the Buddha said, Why be sorry? A woman child, O Lord of men, may prove even a better offspring than a male, for she may grow up wise and virtuous. The boy that she may bear may do great deeds and rule great realms. So this story is so true and evidentical. King Prasenajit, when he was walking with Buddha in Jeta garden, then the messenger came and informed king that his wife Queen Malika gave birth to a daughter. And after hearing this, the name of daughter, king became sad. And then Buddha said that a woman or a daughter could be much more wise and virtuous than a male higher. So there is no question of sadness if a daughter is being born. In answer to the question as to why some families rise, the other decay, the Buddha is reported to have told bhikkhus that whatsoever families monks having attained greatness of the possession fail to last long, because they seek not for what is lost, they repair not the decay, they eat and drink to excess, they put in authority a woman or a man that is immoral, whatsoever families fail to last long, all them to do because of these four reasons, the one or other of them. Whatsoever families monk do last long, all of them do so because they seek for what is lost, repair and decay, eat and drink in moderation, and put in authority a virtue of woman. So then he's giving two examples, that those families and sanghas who actually destroyed, they lost their reputation because they were overeating, they were undisciplined, and they were not respecting women. But any of the families and monks uh, who proved themselves as great and virtuous, they eat in a moderation, they did a lot of discipline, they followed discipline, and they give respect to women. So this is what his central teaching of Buddhist doctrine, we can say. uh, who, in describing to bhikkhus what happened when a monarch who rolls the wheel, who is destined to be Chakravarti, world monarch, appear in the world, Buddha is reported to have told the monks. So, and Buddha says that whosoever Chakravarti king is there, they all are being born out of a woman. So, woman is never inferior. Woman is always supreme. She is giving birth and she is giving life to the universe. Whenever such a monarch appears, there is the appearance of the seven treasure, the treasure of the wheel. So there are seven treasures Buddha is counting, and one of them is woman. One is wheel, elephant, horse, jewel, and woman. House father and treasure of their apparent. On other occasion of Buddha speaking of the value of woman to the world said. Okay. Woman is the commodity supreme because, as the commentator adds, she is of indispensable utility because through her bodhisattva and the world rulers take place. So all these bodhisattvas and the rulers of the world, they are taking birth from a woman. So this is what Buddha used to think about women. How can a person do whose views the birth of a daughter was not an occasion for sorrow and might well be an occasion of joy, who held the view that those families are saved from a downfall which place a woman in authority over their affair, who has no hesitations in describing woman as one of the seven treasures and a thing of supreme value, described as a hater or despiser of women. These statements are typically of the general statements entertained by the Buddha towards womankind. Can anybody say that they are calculated to bring the woman into ridicule and contempt? So these are the examples, evidentical examples, we can say, that Buddha always respected women. Those who see a social wrong in Buddha placing the bhikkhunis under the authority of bhikkhus do not realize what a revolutionary act it was on the part of Buddha to have allowed women to take sannyas or parivrajya, a monkhood. Under the Brahmanical theory, women had already been denied the right of acquired knowledge. When the question of sannyas When the question of sannyas came, they did to the Indian woman another wrong. As a matter of history, sannyas was not an ideal for Brahmins who worshipped the Veda and who for a long time refused to recognize the Upanishads as sacred literature. Sannyas was the ideal for the Upanishads, and the end of sannyas was to realize the Upanishadic doctrine that the Atma is Brahma. The Brahmins were dead opposed to the life of sannyas. Ultimately, they yielded that subject to the certain conditions. One of the conditions was that women and Shudras were not to be eligible for sannyas. So, in the Brahmanical literature, we find that women and Shudra, they cannot take sannyas. But Buddha allowed women and Shudra to take sannyas. It is important to understand the reason why Brahmins debarred women from taking sannyas, because it helped to understand the attitude of Brahmins towards women, which was a sharp contrast with that of Buddha. The reason is stated by Manu. It reads as follows: Women have no right to study Vedas. That is why their sanskar rites are performed without Veda mantra. Women have no knowledge of religions because they have no right to know the Vedas. The uttering of Veda mantra is useful for removing sin. A woman cannot utter the Veda mantra. They are untruth. They are as untruth. This is what Manu Smriti, uh, hymn number 18. Although Manu was later than the Buddha, he had enunciated the old view propounded in the order uh, Dhanna Sutra. This view of the woman was both an insult and an injury to the woman of India. It was an injury because without any justification she was denied the right to acquire knowledge, which is the birthright of every human being. It was an insult because after denying her opportunity to acquire knowledge, she was declared to be unclean as untruth for want of knowledge, and therefore not to be allowed to take sannyas, which was regarded as path to reach Brahma. Not only was she denied the right to realize her spiritual potentiality, she was declared to be bare of any spiritual potentiality by Brahmins. This is a crucial deal with women. It is not parallel, as Professor Max Muller had said. However far the human may be from the divine, nothing on the earth is nearer to God than man. Nothing on the earth more godlike than man. If this is the true of man, why is this not true for women? The Brahmins had no answer. By admitting women to the life of Parivrajika, the Buddha by one stroke removed both these wrongs. He gave them the right to knowledge and right to realize their spiritual potentiality. So please listen it again. Buddha gave them women right to knowledge and right to realize their spiritual potentiality along with man. It was both a revolution and liberation of women in India. To quote the word of Professor Max Muller, the history of India teaches us that the galling fetters of the old Brahmanic law were broken at last, for there can be little doubt that we have to recognize in Buddhism an assertion of the right of individual liberty, and more particularly of the right of raising above the trammel of society, of going as it were into the forest and living a life of perfect spiritual freedom whenever a desire for such freedom arose. This freedom which the Buddha gave to the women of India is fact of far greater importance and outweighed whatever stigma which is said to be involved in the subordination of bhikkhunis to the bhikkhu sangha. This was an empty freedom. It was freedom which they can enjoy, sangha of free indeed, or glorious free I am I. Sangamutta, a bhikkhuni who was a Brahmin girl, Metika, another bhikkhuni, also Brahmin girls, Sangha. So sit I here upon rock, and over my spirit sweep the breath of liberty. So these two bhikkhunis, Mutta and Metika, these two are Brahmin girls and who were being inducted in the Bhikkhuni Sangha of Buddha. And what they say is, after attaining that moksha or after attaining that freedom, what she said, so I sit here on upon a rock, and over my spirit sweep the breath of liberty. And Mrs. Rice, David says, to gain his freedom mobility, they, like their later Christian sisters, had laid down all social positions, all domestic success. They had lost their world, but in exchange they had won the status of an individual in place of being adjunct. However much admired, fostered and sheltered they might, as such have been, with a shaven head, wrapped in their robe, a dress indistinguishable, it would seem, from this swathing toga and swathed undergarments of male religious. The sister was free to come and go, to dive along the depth of wood or climb aloft. So in India, most of the time it is thought that a woman who is not married or a woman who is single, they are not being given so much respect. But the fact is that one point of time you lose maybe your family or husband, whatever. But the other point is you get a lot of freedom and lot of the personal choices where you can achieve anything. So that is what personal liberty, personal choice is being given more regard and place in Buddhism rather than attaching some name or just sticking to the family, which is maybe atrocious or cruel to women. In allowing women to become bhikkhunis, the Buddha not only opened to them the way of liberty, he also allowed them to acquire dignity, independence of sex. To her freedom, she could, in the word of Mrs. Rice, wed the other austere joy of being recognized, at least by her brothers, uh, Ar- Arhantas, as a rational being without a reference to sex. As such, she breathed the spiritual atmosphere. She shared the intellectual communion of that religious aristocracy called in the Pittakas, Aryas, with whom she claimed that power of seeing all things as they really are, which the Buddhists call being awake. So, women being a woman, we have every freedom to enjoy life the way uh, it is natural. Not necessarily your name is associated with some Mr., Mrs., or something like that. So, as a woman, you are free, even if no need to mention the gender identity, but as a human being, we are free. How should the woman nature hinder us? Uh, I mean, these are the other quotations Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is giving. This is not at all Buddha in allowing women to become bhikkhunis. He opened them the way to equality with men. And observed by Mrs. Rice David, it is true that the bhikkhunis were technically appointed junior in perpetuity to bhikkhus. It is equally clear that by intellectual and more eminence, a theory gatha, you could, the stories or the personal narratives of women during Buddha, these are known as Therigata, which is considered to be the first woman writings in Indian history also. So my request would be to go and read Therigata. Theri might claim equality with the highest of the fraternity. In the poems and instances occur in 30 and 7, where Buddha associates himself in the spiritual attainment with the great Kassapa successor as head of the order to the founder himself. In this connection, it should be noted that Buddha did not place any premium or virginity as such. He kept his way open to all class of women, married, unmarried, widow, and even in the prostitutes. All could acquire merit, freedom, dignity, equality with their men. There can be no doubt that there has been an utter downfall in position of women in India from what at once. One cannot say much about the part they played in ancient time in the statecraft, but there is no doubt that they occupy a very high position in the intellectual and social life of our country. That one time a woman was entitled to Upnayana, clear from the Atharva Veda, where a girl is spoken of as being eligible for marriage having finished her brahmacharya. From this Shruta Shutra, it is clear that women could repeat mantras of the Vedas and women were taught to read the Veda. Panini's Ashtadhyayi bears testimony to the fact that women attend Gurukul college and studied the various shakhas, the sections of the Veda, and became expertise in Mimamsa. Mimamsa is the interpretation for the religious text. Patanjali's Mahabhasya shows that women were teacher and taught Vedas to girl students. The stories of women entries into the public discussions with men on most abstract subject of religion, philosophy and metaphysics are by no means few. The story of public disputation between Janak and Sulabha, between Yajnavalk and Gargi, between Yajnavalk and Maitreyi, and between Shankaracharya and Vidyadhari shows that Indian women in pre-Manu's time could rise to the highest pinnacle of learning and education. That at one time women were highly respected cannot be disputed. Among them, Ratnis, who played so prominent a part in the coronation of king in ancient time, India was queen India was queen, and the king made her an offering as he did to the others. Not only the king elected did homage to the queen, he worshipped his other wives of lower caste. In the same way, the king offered salutations after coronation ceremony to the ladies of the chief of the Shrenis, that are the guild. This is very high position of woman in any part of the world who was responsible for their fall. It was Manu, the lawgiver of the Hindus. There can be no other answer to leave no room of doubt. Let me quote some of the laws by Manu regarding women and are to be found in Manu Smriti. These are the references of Smritis 213. It is the nature of woman to seduce men in this world. For that reason, the wives never underguarded in the company of female. For women are able to lead astray in this world, not only a fool but even a learned man, and to make him a slave of desire and anger. One should not sit in a lonely place with one's mother, sister, and daughter, for the senses are powerful and master even a learned man. Women do not care for beauty nor their attain fix on age, thinking it is enough that he is a man. They give themselves to the handsome and to the ugly. Through their possession, through their passion for men, through their mutable temper, through natural heartlessness, they become disloyal towards their husbands. However carefully they may be guarded in this world, knowing their disposition, which the Lord of the creature laid to them at the creation to be such, men should most sternly exert himself to guard them. When creating them, Manu allotted women to love of their seed and ornament, impure desire, wrath, dishonesty, malice, bad conduct. This shows how low was woman in the opinion of Manu. The law of Manu against women are of peace with you. Women are not to be free under any circumstance in the opinion of Manu. Day night, women must kept in independence by males of their families, and they attach themselves to the sensual enjoyment. They must be kept under one's control. So these are actually the translation of Manu Smriti, in which Manu is giving talking about woman and how lower he is keeping woman in her position. Her father protects her in childhood, her husband protects her in youth, and her sons protect her in old age. A woman is never for independence. Woman must particularly be guarded against evil inclination, however trifling they may appear. If they are not guarded, they will bring sorrow on two families. Considering the higher duties of all castes, even weak husbands must strive to guard their wives. By a girl, by a young woman, or even by an aged one, nothing must be done independently, even in their own house. In childhood, a female must be subject to her father, in youth to her husband, and when her lord is dead, in her sons. Woman must never be independent. She must not seek to separate herself from her father, husband, and son. By leaving them, she would make both her own and her husband's families contemptible. Woman is not to have a right to divorce. Women don't have a right to divorce. It means they have to suffer the troubled marriage, the painful marriages. The husband is declared to be, but at the same time, a man can get out of marriage, but a woman is not being given right to go out of marriage. The husband is declared to be one with wife, which means that there could be no separation once a woman is married. Many Hindus stop here as though this is the whole story regarding Manu's law of divorce and keep on idolizing it by comforting their conscience with the thought that Manu regarding marriage as a sacrament and therefore did not allow divorce. This is of course so far from the truth. How his law against divorce had very different motive. It was not to tie up a man to a woman, but it was to tie up a woman to a man and to leave them free. So when Manu says that a woman cannot get divorced, it is not like he is actually connecting man to a woman. So one man is attached to woman, but actually he is controlling woman. So a woman would be always attached to man, but man can go anywhere and woman is loyal to her. So this is how the controlling of woman. For Manu does not prevent a man from giving up his wife. Indeed, he not only allows him to abandon his wife, but he also permit him to sell her. But what he does is prevent his wife from becoming free. What Manu says. So when a woman is not being allowed to go out of marriage, but a man can sell his wife. So it means a man husband become a master of a woman, and whatever painful and atrocious circumstances she is living, she cannot go out of this marriage. But at the same time, man is free. Neither by sale nor by repudiation a wife released from her husband. Even if a husband is selling his wife, still he would be having control over her. The meaning is that a wife sold or repudiated by her husband can never become the legitimate wife of another who may have brought or received her after she was repudiated. If this is not monstrous, nothing can be. But Manu was not worried by considerations of justice or injustice in framing his law. He wanted to deprive women of the freedom they had under the Buddhist regime. Manu was outraged by license and putting to stop deprived her of her liberty. A wife was reduced by Manu to a level of slave in the matter of property. A wife, a son, or a slave, these three are declared to have no property. So, a wife, a son, and a slave, these three are declared to have no property. The wealth which they earn or acquire from him, whom they belong. So, when a woman, a wife who is earning something, or a son or a slave, when they are earning something, then when they are accumulating their wealth, the wealth will not be of their own, but the wealth will be of the master, because they are slave under some men. When she became a widow, Manu allowed her maintenance. If her husband was joined and widow's estate in the property of her husband, if she was separated from his family, but Manu never allows her to have any domination over property. So Manu didn't allow a woman to go out of marriage. It means she doesn't have any right to divorce, she doesn't have any right to property. A woman under the laws of Manu is subject to corporal punishment, and Manu allowed the husband a right to beat his wife. A wife, a son, a slave, a pupil, and a younger brother of the full blood who committed faults may be beaten with a rope or a split bamboo. Under Manu, a woman had no right to knowledge. The study of Veda was forbidden to her by Manu. Even for a woman, the performance of the sanskara are necessary, and they should be performed without uttering the Vedic mantra. So when the sanskaras are being uttered for women, they must be uttered. They must not be uttered. They must be performed without Vedic mantras. Offering sacrifices according to Brahmanism form the very soul of religion. Manu forbidden women from performing sacrifices. Manu ordained that a woman shall not perform the daily sacrifices prescribed by the Vedas. If she does it, she will go to hell. These are the page number I give you for your reference. Page number 123, page number 124, page number 125, and page number 126. And it goes up to 127, where he is quoting all the hymns of the Manu Smriti, in which a reference of woman is coming. This is again, I repeat, volume 17, part 2, page number. This is because this big size of this print is taken, so you can actually get it PDF. Online PDF is available, easily it is available. So, hymn number 11. A woman shall not perform the daily sacrifice prescribed by the Vedas. If she does, she will go to hell. To disable her from performing such sacrifices, Manu prevents her from getting the aid and services of Brahmin priest. Then a Brahmin must never eat food given at a sacrifice performed by women. Sacrifices performed by women are inauspicious and not acceptable to God. They should therefore be avoided. Finally, a word regarding to the ideal of life Manu has sought to place before a woman. It had better to be stated in his own words. Him to whom her father may give her, or to brother with the father's permission, she shall obey as long as he lives, and when he is dead, she must not insult his memory. Through destitute of virtue or seeking pleasure elsewhere, or devoid of good qualities, yet a husband must be constantly worshipped as a god by faithful wife. But there is no faithful husband reference we find. No sacrifice, no vow, no fast must be performed by women apart from their husbands. If a wife obey her husband, she will for the reason alone be exalted in heaven. Then comes the choicest text which form the pit and the morrow of this ideal with Manus prescribed for woman. The husband who wedded her with sacred mantra is always a source of happiness to his wife, both in season and out of season, in the world and in the next. She must always be cheerful, clever in management of her household affairs, careful in cleaning her utensils, and economical in expenditure. This the Hindu regarded as very lofty ideal for women, as though to put a copy stone to his this edifice of disabilities of women. Manu declared a new rule: a killing woman was only an upapataka, or that was the minor offense. A liquor, slaying a woman, Shudra, Vaishyas, and Kshatriyas, and the thieves are all minor offenses. So, liquor, slaying a woman, slaying a woman means, literally killing a woman. Vaishyas or Kshatriyas and thieves, those who do not, thieves are those who do not believe in religion, are minor offenses. One can quite understand why Manu should have said that killing of Shudras, Vaishyas, and Kshatriyas was only an apapataka. He was trying to establish that the Brahmin was superior to all these, and only killing of a Brahmin was Mahapataka. But why did he not apply the same rule for women? Only because a woman in the eyes of Manu was thing of no value. In the face of these quotations, can anybody doubt that it was Manu who was responsible for the degradation of women in India? Most people are perhaps aware of this, but they do not seem to know two things. They do not know what is peculiar in Manu. There is nothing new or startling in the laws of Manu about women. They are the views of the Brahmins ever since Brahmanism was born in India. Before Manu, they existed only as a matter of social theory. What Manu did was to convert them with a social theory into a law of state. This is what most significant, that before Manu, whatever opinion and ideas about women were as a social theory. It is existed in a society. It's one of the belief system of the society. But Manu made is a law of state. Now, on the basis of these rules, any state, any king, any institution can punish women. So that was more serious. The second thing they do not know is the reason why led Manu to impose these disabilities upon women. Shudras and women were the two chief sections of the Aryan society which were flocking to join the religion of Buddha, and thereby undermining the foundation of the Brahminic religion. Manu wanted to stem the tide of women following the direction of Buddhism. And this was the argument Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar is saying, that mostly women and untouchables were joining Buddhism during that time, because Buddhism is considered to be the social reform, and that is why probably to stop these two categories, two sections of the society going to Buddhism, these kind of strict laws were made against them. It is for this that Manu imposed these disabilities upon women and crippled them permanently. Those who doubt this might well consider the following injunction containing in Manusmriti. Funeral rites and obsequies which are performed on the death of person shall be withdrawn, shall not be performed for those who are born out of intermixture, from those who are addicted to asceticism, and from those who have ended their lives by committing suicide. So these are the funeral rites must not be given. Those who have converted to, those who are left the Hinduism, those who are not believing in God, so such kind of people must not be given even proper death ritual. They shall also be withdrawn from the women who have joined the